The October morning that would forever change the relationship between Calvin McGreedy and the 6 orphan boys working on his Montana ranch began with an accident that could have ended in tragedy. Calvin, at 71 years old and still insisting on handling the most dangerous ranch work himself, was braking in a new Mustang when the horse spooked at a rattlesnake and threw him hard against a rocky outcrop. The impact knocked Calvin unconscious, and as he fell, the panicked horse stumbled and collapsed directly on top of him, pinning his legs beneath its massive weight. The Mustang, injured in the fall, was unable to rise, creating a deadly trap that would have killed most men within minutes as the horse's weight crushed vital organs and restricted breathing. "Mr. McGreedy's in trouble," shouted Tommy Wilson, the youngest of the orphan boys at 12 years old, his voice carrying across the ranch yard where the others were working on fence repairs. The new horse threw him and fell on him. The 6 boys who came running represented society's unwanted children, boys whom Calvin had taken on not out of charity, but because he needed workers and they needed homes. Marcus O'Brien, 15, and the unofficial leader of the group, Danny Sullivan, 14, small but quick-thinking, Jimmy Chen, 13, whose parents had died building the railroad, Billy Henderson, also 13, whose quiet manner hid surprising strength, Robert Kelly, 12, known for his mechanical aptitude, and Tommy Wilson, the baby of the group but tough beyond his years. For a moment the boys stood frozen by the sight of their employer trapped beneath the fallen horse, its weight clearly crushing him as he lay unconscious and helpless. Most people would have assumed that 6 young boys could never move a horse weighing over 1,000 pounds, that their only option was to ride for help that might arrive too late. "We have to lift the horse off him," Marcus said, with the authority that had made him the natural leader despite his youth. "If we don't get him free right now, he's going to die." "But Marcus, that horse weighs more than all of us put together," Danny protested, his practical nature warring with his desire to help the man who had given them all a home when no one else would. "How can 6 boys move something that heavy?" Marcus looked at the faces of his companions, seeing fear but also determination. These boys had learned to depend on each other through years of hardship, and Calvin McGreedy had been the first adult in their lives to treat them with fairness and respect rather than exploitation and cruelty. "We don't have to move the whole horse," Marcus explained, his mind working quickly through the physics of the situation. "We just have to lift it enough to get Mr. McGreedy out from under it. If we all work together, we can do it." Jimmy Chen, whose slight build concealed a sharp intelligence, studied the situation with the analytical approach that had impressed Calvin during their months of working together. "If we can get leverage on the right spot, we might be able to lift the horse's body just enough to pull him free." The boys scattered to gather tools that could help them create the mechanical advantage they needed. Robert Kelly, whose aptitude for solving problems had made him invaluable around the ranch, found a long steel bar that could serve as a lever. Billy Henderson and Tommy Wilson collected wooden blocks they could use as fulcrums. "Danny, you're the smallest and fastest," Marcus directed as they set up their rescue attempt. "When we lift the horse, you crawl under and grab Mr. McGreedy's shoulders. We'll pull him free as soon as you get a good grip." The injured Mustang was still conscious but clearly in pain, its eyes rolling with panic as the boys approached. Jimmy Chen, who had developed an unusual rapport with difficult animals, spoke to it in soothing tones while the others positioned their makeshift lifting equipment. "Easy, boy," Jimmy murmured, his voice calm despite his racing heart. "We're trying to help both of you. Just stay still for a minute." Calvin was beginning to regain consciousness as the boys worked, his vision blurry and his breathing labored from the weight crushing his chest. Through his confusion, he could hear familiar voices and see movement around him, but he couldn't understand what was happening. "Mr. McGreedy, can you hear me?" Marcus called out as he and Robert positioned their lever beneath the horse's body. "We're going to get you out of there. Just hold on." The first attempt to lift the horse failed, their combined strength insufficient to move the dead weight even a few inches. The boys regrouped quickly, adjusting their positioning and adding more leverage points to distribute the load among all 6 of them. "On the count of 3, Marcus announced, his voice steady despite the pressure of the situation. 1, 2, 3. This time, their coordinated effort succeeded in lifting the horse's body just enough to create a gap beneath it. Danny Sullivan, despite his small size, dove under the animal without hesitation, wrapping his arms around Calvin's shoulders and beginning to pull him towards safety. "Got him!" Danny called out, his voice strained with effort as he struggled to move Calvin's unconscious weight. "Keep lifting. I'm almost got him clear." The other boys maintained their hold on the levers, their young muscles trembling with the strain of supporting such enormous weight. Sweat poured down their faces as they fought to keep the horse elevated long enough for Danny to complete the rescue. "Come on, Mr. McGreedy," Danny whispered as he pulled Calvin's limp form inch by inch toward freedom. "You saved all of us when nobody else would. Now we're going to save you." The final moments of the rescue required every ounce of strength the boys possessed. As Danny finally pulled Calvin clear of the horse's weight, the other 5 boys released their levers and the animal settled back to the ground, still alive but clearly needing medical attention for its own injuries. Calvin McGreedy lay motionless, in the dirt, his breathing shallow and his legs clearly injured from being crushed beneath the horse. But he was alive, and he was free, because 6 boys whom society had written off as worthless had risked their own safety to save the man who had given them a chance at decent lives. "Is he breathing?" Tommy asked anxiously as the boys gathered around their unconscious employer, their faces showing the strain of what they had just accomplished. Marcus knelt beside Calvin and placed his ear near the old rancher's mouth, feeling the weak but steady flow of air. "He's alive, but he's hurt bad. Billy, you're the fastest rider. Take Thunder and go for Doc Patterson. The rest of us will get Mr. McGreedy to the house." As Billy raced away on Calvin's best horse to fetch medical help, the remaining boys fashioned a stretcher from fence boards and blankets, carefully lifting their injured employer and carrying him to the ranch house where they could tend to him properly. "Jimmy, get some water and clean cloths," Marcus directed as they settled Calvin in his own bed. "Robert, stoke up the fire and put on water to boil. Tommy, check his legs and see how bad the damage is." The boys worked with efficiency born of necessity and loyalty, their actions revealing the depth of their gratitude to the man who had treated them as individuals rather than just laborers. Calvin had given them not just work and wages, but dignity and respect, and they were determined to repay that debt regardless of the cost to themselves. As they waited for the doctor to arrive, Calvin began to regain fuller consciousness, his eyes focusing slowly on the concerned faces surrounding his bed. The pain in his legs was excruciating, but he was alive and aware, which was more than he had any right to expect after being trapped beneath a 1,000-pound horse. "Boys," he whispered, his voice weak but clear. "What happened? How did you get me out from under that horse?" Marcus spoke for all of them, his young voice carrying the pride and determination that had driven their rescue effort. "We lifted him off you, sir. All of us together. We couldn't let you die when you've been so good to us." Calvin's eyes filled with tears as he absorbed the magnitude of what these boys had accomplished. 6 orphaned children, the ones society considered expendable burdens, had risked their lives to save his. Their courage and loyalty revealed character that most adults never displayed. "You could have been killed," Calvin said, his voice thick with emotion. "That horse could have fallen on any of you while you were trying to lift it. Why did you take such a risk for an old man?" Danny Sullivan, still dirty from crawling under the horse to pull Calvin to safety, answered with simple honesty. "Because You're our family, Mr. McGreedy. You took us in when nobody else wanted us, and you treated us like we mattered. Family helps family. The words struck Calvin with profound force. These boys, who had been abandoned by the world and treated as commodities by most adults, had chosen to risk everything for someone who had shown them basic human decency. Their definition of family wasn't based on blood relations, but on mutual respect and caring. Dr. Patterson arrived within the hour, accompanied by Billy Henderson, who had pushed Thunder to his limits to bring help as quickly as possible. The doctor's examination revealed that Calvin had suffered severe bruising and a broken leg, but no life-threatening injuries that would prevent full recovery. "Mr. McGreedy, you're one lucky man," Dr. Patterson announced after completing his treatment. "A few more minutes under that horse and you wouldn't have survived. These boys saved your life." As the doctor prepared to leave, he pulled Marcus aside for a private conversation. "Son, what you boys did today took more courage than most grown men would have shown. You should be proud of yourselves." Marcus's response revealed the maturity that hardship and responsibility had forced upon him at a young age. "Doc, we just did what needed doing. Mr. McGreedy would have done the same for any of us." That evening, as Calvin rested in bed with his injuries properly treated and the immediate crisis past, the 6 boys gathered around him to discuss the ranch work that still needed to be done. Their concern was not for their own comfort, but for maintaining the operation that provided their livelihood and home. "Don't worry about the work," Calvin told them, his voice stronger now that the shock was wearing off. "The most important thing is that we're all safe. The ranch can wait," but the boys had already organized themselves to handle Calvin's responsibilities while he recovered. They had divided up his duties based on their individual strengths and were prepared to maintain the operation without outside help. "Mr. McGreedy," Tommy said, with the determination that made him seem older than his 12 years, "you've taught us that a ranch is more than just land and animals. It's a family working together to build something worthwhile. We're not going to let your accident stop us from taking care of what we've all built together." As Calvin looked at the faces of the 6 boys who had literally lifted a horse off his broken body to save his life, he understood that he had gained something more valuable than just workers or even surrogate sons. He had found partners in the truest sense, young people who shared his vision and were willing to sacrifice for their common goals. The accident that could have ended in tragedy had instead revealed the strength of bonds that had been forming between a lonely old rancher and 6 boys whom the world had discarded as worthless. Their courage in his moment of desperate need had proven that family is defined not by blood or law, but by the willingness to lift each other up when life threatens, to crush hope. The weeks following Calvin McGreedy's rescue from beneath the fallen horse had transformed the dynamics of his ranch in ways that went far beyond the physical challenges of recovering from his injuries. The 6 orphan boys who had literally lifted 1,000 pounds of horseflesh to save his life had proven themselves to be more than hired hands or even surrogate sons. They had become true partners in every sense of the word. Calvin, confined to bed rest by Dr. Patterson's strict orders, watched through his bedroom window as the boys managed every aspect of ranch operations with competence that amazed visiting neighbors and impressed potential buyers who came to look at livestock. Marcus O'Brien had emerged as a natural ranch foreman, coordinating work assignments and making decisions with wisdom that belied his 15 years. "Those boys are running this place better than most experienced crews," observed Sheriff Tom Bradley during one of his visits to check on Calvin's recovery. "I've never seen such teamwork and dedication from workers so young." Calvin nodded with obvious pride as he watched Danny Sullivan and Jimmy Chen working together to repair a section of fence that had been damaged by recent storms. Their cooperation and problem-solving abilities had developed remarkably during the month since the accident, as if the crisis had awakened leadership qualities that had always been present but dormant. "Sheriff, what those boys accomplished wasn't just about physical strength," Calvin explained, his voice still showing the effects of his injuries, but growing stronger each day. "It was about loyalty and courage that most adults never display. They risked their lives for me because they understood what we mean to each other." The transformation in the boys themselves had been equally remarkable. The confidence gained from successfully managing adult responsibilities had straightened their shoulders and strengthened their voices. They approached challenges with the assurance that came from knowing they could handle whatever problems arose through cooperation and determination. "Mr. McGreedy's accident taught us something important," Robert Kelly explained to Dr. Patterson during one of the physician's regular visits. "We learned that we're not just boys who work here. We're partners in something valuable that belongs to all of us." But their success had also attracted attention from less welcome sources. Word of their competence and Calvin's temporary incapacity had reached the ears of neighboring ranchers who saw opportunities to acquire valuable livestock and land at reduced prices from an operation they assumed was failing without strong leadership. "Calvin, you need to consider selling while you can still get fair value," suggested Harrison Wells, owner of the largest spread in the county, during an uninvited visit that was clearly motivated by acquisitive rather than charitable intentions. "Those boys are doing their best, but ranch work requires experience and authority they simply don't possess." Calvin's response revealed how completely his perspective on the boys had changed since they had saved his life. "Harrison, those boys have more experience and better judgment than most of the men I've worked with over 40 years of ranching. They're not just keeping this place running, they're improving it." Wells's skepticism was evident in his dismissive laugh. "Calvin, they're orphan children who were probably living on the streets before you took them in. Good intentions don't qualify someone to make decisions about livestock breeding, land management, or financial planning." "Maybe not," Calvin agreed, "but intelligence, dedication, and the willingness to work together toward common goals do qualify them. And these boys have demonstrated all of those qualities in ways that would impress any fair-minded observer." The test of Calvin's faith in the boys came when a severe early winter storm threatened the ranch's cattle herd, with conditions that would challenge even experienced ranchers. Heavy snow and freezing temperatures created life-threatening situations for livestock that required immediate and coordinated response to prevent massive losses. "Mr. McGreedy, the cattle in the north pasture are trapped by snowdrifts," Marcus reported during the storm's second day, his face showing the strain of 18 hours of continuous work. "We need to get feed to them soon, or we'll start losing animals to starvation and exposure." Calvin's frustration at being bedridden during such a critical time was evident, but so was his confidence in the boys' ability to handle the crisis. "Marcus, you know the ranch and the cattle better than anyone. What's your plan?" The strategy Marcus outlined revealed tactical thinking and resource management skills that impressed even Calvin's experienced judgment. The boys had analyzed the DE situation, identified the most vulnerable animals, and developed a systematic approach to rescue operations that maximized their limited manpower and equipment. "We'll use the sleds to haul feed to the trapped cattle," Marcus explained, pointing to a hand-drawn map showing the locations of various groups of animals. "Danny and Jimmy will handle the north pasture. Billy and Robert will take the east section, and Tommy and I will cover the south range, where the breeding stock is located." The rescue operation that followed tested every skill the boys had learned during their months of working together. Fighting through snow drifts that sometimes reached their waists, they hauled feed to stranded cattle, broke ice on frozen water sources, and guided vulnerable animals to sheltered areas where they could survive the continuing storm. Tommy's idea about using the windbreaks saved at least 50 head of cattle, Danny reported, when the boys gathered for their evening meal after the third day of rescue efforts. His knowledge of where the cattle go for natural shelter made the difference between success and disaster. Calvin listened to their reports with growing amazement at their competence and growing gratitude for their dedication. These boys were not just protecting his investment, they were preserving the foundation of their shared future through personal sacrifice and intelligent planning. The storm finally broke on the fourth day, revealing damage that would have bankrupted many operations, but which the boys' efforts had minimized to manageable levels. Their success in protecting the herd during such severe conditions proved their capabilities in ways that impressed even their harshest critics. I have to admit, Calvin, those boys handled that storm better than crews twice their age and experience, Harrison Wells acknowledged reluctantly when he visited to assess storm damage throughout the area. Their coordination and decision-making were impressive, but it was Dr. Patterson's observation that revealed the deeper significance of what had occurred during Calvin's confinement and the boys' assumption of full responsibility for ranch operations. Calvin, what's happened here goes beyond successful ranch management, the doctor said as he examined his patient's healing injuries. Those boys have developed into genuine partners who share your vision and are willing to sacrifice for common goals. That's not something you can hire, it's something that grows from mutual respect and shared hardship. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of unexpected visitors. A delegation of territorial officials, led by Child Welfare Inspector William Hayes, had come to investigate reports that Calvin was exploiting child labor and failing to provide proper supervision for orphaned minors in his care. Mr. McGreedy, we've received complaints that you've been allowing children to perform dangerous ranch work without adequate adult supervision, Inspector Hayes announced with the bureaucratic authority of someone who had never actually worked. With children in practical situations, Calvin felt his protective instincts sharpen as he realized the boy's success and his temporary incapacity had been interpreted by some as evidence of improper child treatment. Inspector Hayes, these boys are learning valuable skills while contributing to an operation that provides their livelihood and security. Nevertheless, territorial regulations require that orphaned children receive proper supervision and age-appropriate work assignments, Hayes replied, consulting his official documents. Reports suggest that boys as young as 12 have been handling adult responsibilities, including livestock management and financial decisions. The confrontation that followed would determine not just the boys' immediate future, but the legal precedent for how capable minors could be treated within the territorial child welfare system. Calvin understood that his accident and the boys' competent response had inadvertently created a test case for alternative approaches to orphan care and development. Inspector, would you like to interview the boys about their experiences and treatment here? Calvin offered, confident that their own testimony would reveal the difference between exploitation and opportunity. What Hayes discovered during his interviews clearly challenged his preconceptions about appropriate childcare and supervision. Instead of the overworked, undereducated minors he expected to find, he encountered articulate young people who spoke intelligently about ranch management, demonstrated advanced problem-solving skills, and expressed genuine satisfaction with their circumstances and opportunities. Sir, Mr. McGreedy has taught us skills that will serve us for life, Marcus explained to the inspector with respectful confidence. We're not just following orders, we're learning to think, plan, and solve problems that prepare us for adult responsibilities. Jimmy, Chen added his perspective on the educational value of their work assignments. Inspector Hayes, we've learned more about agriculture, animal husbandry, and business management in the past year than most children learn in formal schools. Our work here is our education. Inspector Hayes spent 2 full days observing operations and interviewing each boy privately about his treatment, working conditions, and future aspirations. What he found consistently contradicted complaints about exploitation and instead revealed an innovative approach to child development that was producing remarkable results. Mr. McGreedy, Hayes concluded after completing his investigation, while your methods are unconventional, I find no evidence of abuse or exploitation. These boys appear to be receiving excellent preparation for adult citizenship through meaningful work and genuine responsibility. The official validation of their arrangement meant more to Calvin and the boys than simple legal protection from interference. It represented recognition that their family, built on mutual respect and shared sacrifice, was as valid and valuable as any traditional structure society might prefer. As Calvin's physical recovery progressed and he was finally able to return to active ranch work, the partnership that had emerged during his confinement continued to flourish. The boys who had literally lifted a horse to save his life had also lifted his understanding of what was possible when adults trusted young people with genuine responsibility and recognition. Boys, when you pulled me out from under that horse, you saved more than just my life, Calvin told them during their first group meeting after his return to full activity. You saved our future together and proved that family isn't about blood relations, but about being willing to lift each other up when life gets too heavy to bear alone. How will Calvin formally recognize the boys' partnership in the ranch? What challenges will test their bond as winter approaches? Subscribe to our channel to witness the incredible evolution of a relationship built on mutual rescue and respect. The spring of 1889 brought visitors from across the American West to witness what territorial newspapers were calling the McGreedy miracle, a working partnership between an aging rancher and 6 orphaned boys whose mutual rescue and respect had created one of the most successful ranch operations in Montana Territory. Standing in the main pasture where prize-winning cattle grazed on land that had nearly been lost during his accident, Calvin McGreedy watched with deep satisfaction as the 6 boys, now confident young men ranging from 13 to 16 years old, demonstrated advanced ranching techniques to a group of agricultural experts who had come to study their methods. The key principle Mr. McGreedy taught us, Marcus O'Brien explained to the gathered visitors with the authority of someone who had proven himself through crisis and success, is that real strength comes from working together toward shared goals rather than just individual achievement. When we lifted that horse off him, we learned that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things through cooperation and determination. The transformation in all 6 boys had been remarkable to witness. The confidence gained from successfully managing adult responsibilities during Calvin's recovery had developed into genuine leadership abilities that impressed every professional who observed their work. Their success challenged fundamental assumptions about child capabilities and the proper relationship between age and authority. These young men have developed ranch management skills that rival those of experienced professionals, observed Dr. James Richardson from the Territorial Agricultural College, who had been documenting their innovative approaches to livestock breeding and land management. Their combination of practical experience and analytical thinking produces results that exceed what we typically see from much older ranchers. But success had also brought new challenges. The publicity surrounding their story had attracted attention from those who viewed their achievements as threats to established social and economic structures. A coalition of traditional ranchers and child welfare officials had questioned whether minors should be allowed such responsibility and whether Calvin was properly preparing them for their appropriate place in society. Mr. McGreedy has created unrealistic expectations in those boys, complained Senator Robert Hayes during territorial legislative hearings on child welfare policy. They think they deserve the same opportunities and respect as adults, which undermines proper social hierarchy and authority structures. The philosophical battle being fought over their partnership had implications that extended far beyond one ranch operation. At stake was whether society would recognize capability and character regardless of age, or continue to limit opportunities based on traditional assumptions about childhood and authority. What Calvin and those boys have proven, explained Professor Margaret Sinclair, the child welfare reformer whose studies of their success had influenced policy debates throughout the West, is that young people rise to meet expectations when they're treated as capable individuals rather than just problems to be managed. The ultimate test of everything Calvin and the boys had built together came when territorial authorities proposed new regulations that would have limited the responsibilities that could be assigned to orphaned minors and required their placement in more structured educational environments. The proposed Child Protection Act would essentially force the breakup of successful arrangements like ours, Calvin explained to the boys during one of their regular planning meetings. They want to send you to institutions for proper education and moral development, regardless of what you've already accomplished here. The boys' reaction to this threat revealed how completely they had internalized the values Calvin had demonstrated through his faith in their abilities. Instead of accepting potential separation, they organized themselves to fight for the principles that had transformed their lives and created their shared success. Mr. McGreedy, Danny Sullivan said, speaking for the group with the articulate confidence that had replaced his earlier uncertainty, we want to testify before the territorial legislature about what we've learned and accomplished here. Our experiences give us authority to speak about child development and capability that politicians and theorists don't possess. The courage required for such advocacy was extraordinary. These young men would be challenging powerful adults who controlled policies affecting thousands of orphaned children throughout the territory, speaking truth to authority in ways that could result in their forced separation and placement in institutional care they had learned to fear. You don't have to do this, Calvin assured them, understanding the risks involved in such public testimony. You've already proven everything that needs proving just by becoming the fine young men you are and building a successful life together. Marcus's response revealed the leadership and moral courage that had emerged under Calvin's mentorship. Sir, we survived being orphaned and found each other and you because someone was willing to take chances on what we could become rather than just accepting what society said we were worth. Now we want to speak for other children who need the same opportunities. The legislative hearing that followed became a landmark moment in territorial child welfare policy. The 6 young men, now proven ranch partners with demonstrated success in complex adult responsibilities, testified about their experiences with both traditional institutional care and the transformative power of being treated as capable individuals. Honorable legislators, Marcus addressed the packed hearing room with the poise that had replaced his earlier defensive wariness. We want you to understand that children don't need to be protected from responsibility and challenge. We need to be protected from having our potential limited by adult fears and assumptions about what we can accomplish. Tommy Wilson, now 14, and the articulate voice of the group's youngest member, added his perspective on the difference between protection and limitation, The greatest danger to orphan children isn't being given too much responsibility. It's being told we're not capable of handling the opportunities that could help us build meaningful lives. Jimmy Chen spoke about the educational value of practical responsibility compared to traditional institutional approaches. Honorable Senators, we've learned more about agriculture, business, and leadership through partnership with Mr. McGreedy than we could have gained from years of traditional schooling. Real education comes from solving real problems that matter. The legislators, many of whom had never heard young people speak about their experiences with such intelligence and dignity, were clearly moved by testimony that challenged fundamental assumptions about childhood development and educational effectiveness. "Young men," said Committee Chairman William Davies, "your achievements are impressive, but critics argue that your success is exceptional and doesn't justify changing established systems that serve thousands of other children safely, if not spectacularly." Billy Henderson's answer revealed wisdom that had been forged through years of overcoming challenges through cooperation and determination. Senator Davies, "What happened with us proves that children can accomplish remarkable things when adults believe in our potential rather than just managing our limitations. If 6 orphaned boys can become successful ranch partners, imagine what thousands of children could accomplish with similar opportunities and respect." The impact of their testimony was immediate and profound. Territorial newspapers carried stories about the boys who spoke truth to power, and public opinion shifted dramatically toward recognizing that capable young people deserved opportunities to prove themselves regardless of traditional age-based restrictions. "What you young men accomplished in that hearing room changed everything," Dr. Richardson told them after the legislative session concluded. "Your courage in articulating the difference between protection and opportunity has given reform advocates the evidence they need to challenge restrictive policies throughout the West." The legislative outcome was better than reformers had dared hope. Instead of passing restrictive regulations, the territorial legislature established the McGreedy standards for alternative child placement, recognizing that capable minors could assume adult responsibilities when appropriate supervision and education were provided. The McGreedy model, as their partnership became known, established principles that young people should be challenged rather than just protected, that capability should be recognized regardless of age, and that successful child development required opportunity for meaningful contribution rather than just passive care. "What we've accomplished extends far beyond successful ranching," Calvin told the boys during a celebration of their legislative victory. "We've proven that family can be built through mutual respect and shared sacrifice, and that young people become extraordinary adults when they're treated as individuals with unlimited potential." As the boys prepared for their transition to full adult independence, each had developed clear plans for using their experience and success to help other young people facing similar challenges. Their partnership with Calvin had created opportunities they intended to use in service of broader social progress. "Mr. McGreedy," Robert Kelly said during their final group meeting as legal minors, "when we lifted that horse off you, we weren't just saving your life. We were proving to ourselves that we could handle whatever challenges came our way if we worked together and supported each other." Calvin's response came from the heart of a man who had discovered that investing in young people's potential was the most rewarding work of his life. "Boys, what you lifted that day wasn't just 1,000 pounds of horseflesh. You lifted my understanding of what's possible when adults trust young people with genuine responsibility and recognition." The graduation ceremony that marked their official transition to adult partnership in the ranch was attended by territorial officials, child welfare advocates, and dozens of other young people whose lives had been improved by the standards their success had helped establish. "Ladies and gentlemen," Calvin addressed the gathered crowd, "these 6 young men represent proof that human potential knows no age limits when it's nurtured by adults who believe in capability rather than just managing limitations. They've shown us that the true measure of successful child development is not compliance or safety, but the courage and competence to lift each other up when life threatens to crush hope." Danny Sullivan, preparing to expand their ranch operations to include a training program for other orphaned young people, spoke for all of them in his farewell address as legal minors. "We learned that the weight we carry as partners isn't measured in pounds or years, but in our responsibility to create opportunities for others who need someone to believe in their potential." Years later, when historians wrote about the child welfare reforms that transformed the American West, they would trace their origins to an October morning when 6 orphaned boys lifted a fallen horse to save the life of an old rancher who had given them a chance at dignity and partnership. The McGreedy Ranch became a model for alternative child development programs throughout the territories, proving that young people could become extraordinary adults when treated as capable partners, rather than just problems to be managed or burdens to be endured. From desperate orphans to successful partners, the 6 boys proved that strength multiplies when people lift each other up instead of holding each other down. Calvin's faith in their potential and their courage in saving his life created a legacy that transformed how society understands childhood capability and the power of mutual respect. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of partnerships that transcend age and circumstance, showing that true family is built through shared sacrifice and the willingness to lift each other toward unlimited potential.